Time to time. B, what's up, my man?
Oh, not much, guys. How y'all doing today?
Doing well. Doing well. You pretty quickly threw cold water on the Florida State and Clemson report. I guess I could have supported you and tweeted, can confirm. I am in agreement that the SEC does not appear to be interested in going beyond 16 teams right now. Tell me a little bit more about what you thought yesterday.
Well, I was surprised that the era of believing random dudes on Twitter who think they have sources in realignment talk took so long to get here. Because that phase seemed like it got here a lot quicker 10 years ago. I know that guy that said that on Twitter, and his grift is to try to say not necessarily outlandish things, but things that are pretty groundbreaking that have a very, very, very small chance of actually happening. And that's what happened here. It's just all for e-clout. And any rational person knows that those two teams are locked in the ACC until 2035 or 2036, I should say. If they're going to get out of that contract, they are going to have to pay a ton of money. So that's not happening. I was disappointed that several outlets picked up on it. I thought were reputable, like PFF College, but I mean it's the signal to me that we are now in full-on realignment mode, because you're going to have a whole lot more of this crap. I remember 10 years ago, the dude of West Virginia had West Virginia going to the SEC along with Florida State and Clemson. Well, we're going to get that again. That's happening.
I did think it was, I don't even know if interesting the right word. I thought it was a logical step today that George Fialkoff at the Pac-12 and Bob Bowlesby in the Big 12 are having some conversations. What I'm not entirely sure about is how much sense it makes for the Pac-12 to absorb the remaining or some of the remaining Big 12 teams. Is that a fit that makes sense?
In some respects, yeah, right? Because, think about what the Pac-12's problem is. And George Kliavkoff even said this at Pac-12 Media Day. The time zone issue is a massive problem. Well, if you absorb the Big 12 and you make it the Big 20 or the Pac-20, I would imagine to be the Big 20 or something, you're playing a lot of your games in the Central Time Zone. And that is.
We just lost Barrett. Perhaps officials at the Pac-12 and the Big 12 did not like the direction he was headed.
Maybe the guy from the radio station in South Carolina found him.
He threw a lightning bolt at Barrett's cell phone. We'll try that again in just a second with Barrett Sallee. So he was headed in the direction, and this makes some sense.
The Big 20.
That time zone has been an issue. Hence, we've got the Pac-12 playing games at 9 a.m. Central Time this year. If you get into the Central Time Zone footprint, then Barrett, maybe that solves some of those issues from the Pac-12. I think that's the direction you were headed.
Yeah, for sure. If you get in the Central Time Zone, you're playing a lot of games at a time where people are actually paying attention. Texas and Oklahoma don't have the visibility problem. The Mississippi schools, LSU, Arkansas, they don't have the visibility problem. So if you're in the Central Time Zone, then you're going to make yourself look good. And think about that. What that would do for the distribution? It would be more likely that the Pac-12 networks get picked up. And they would be rebranded, I think, in a variety of different ways. But it would be a lot easier for carriers to get on board with the Pac-12 network. It provides a ton of different streaming options. And think about this, and I still think this is under-discussed in the whole realignment thing. We're all talking about TV networks and how, grant of rights deals work. Well, we're sitting here with Facebook, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Peacock, Paramount Plus, all these different streaming services that clearly are dying and salivating for live sports. And if you can put together a Big 20 that will take up 3 time zones and provide at least 10 games of inventory every single week, and out-of-conference games will make that even bigger, then you're going to make yourself really, really attractive to any outlet that wants to gobble up some TV rights. So, you could conceivably do that and get the streaming sites in a bidding war, and they're willing to pay.
That's a fascinating angle on this, because I don't know that there's an entity out there that's got more cash just sitting on the side than Amazon has to spend as they please. And certainly they've been willing to go into some different media directions. They've gotten in bed with the NFL. That seems to be a success. Are you surprised that we've not seen more conversation about that as it pertains to college sports?
Yeah, because the most of the deals are locked in. And, I think with the Big 12, obviously it's 2025, and it's been sort of just ESPN and Fox ruling the roost, and those two, they have their streaming sites. They're not going to get. I guess ESPN could put some stuff on Disney Plus, but whatever, it's got ESPN Plus, right? So,
right.
And then Fox has FS Go. So, I think because the rights have been built out for so long, and places like ESPN and Fox have such a big jump on the streaming angle of all this, that it really has limited the ability of these streaming sites to get in. I mean, I guess they could go give the American a ton of money, but it's still going to be the American. If you can gobble up, 20 teams, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 all together, then that's a huge deal. Like that is worth whatever they're going to pay. And like you said, Amazon's got a bunch of disposable cash sitting around. I'm pretty sure Apple does with Tim Cook. And think of it this way too. My employer, CBS, we're losing the SEC. If we can get the Big 20 and we can put some of those games on Paramount Plus, which has been wildly successful already, that's a big deal too. Because they already have, I don't know if people know, I don't follow soccer, but we've got, tons of soccer games all the time for leagues that I can't even pronounce the names of, but they're really important apparently.
I was going to ask you, and I'd like to get to two things. You work for CBS Sports under the umbrella of Big CBS. Do you get the sense that there's regret that maybe CBS didn't go about things differently with regard to negotiating with the SEC? I wasn't there for the negotiations, obviously, but I don't think it would have mattered, right? Like, I think ESPN, with the partnership with the SEC Network, and I think an underappreciated, part of that whole deal is the fact that you're actually helping the education process of a lot of these schools by allowing, that students to get involved with lesser productions of, smaller sports. But I think that was already in the cards. The SEC on CBS, while it's been successful, we were getting the SEC for cheap. So I just can't imagine. No doubt.
I can't imagine ESPN not going in that direction full. Like, I can't imagine that even being a possibility that the SEC would not do with ESPN.
All right, about a minute left. We get the news that Miles Brennan out for an extended period of time with a severe arm injury, broken arm, depending on what you read and what you believe. What does this mean for LSU? Obviously, Max Johnson, the quarterback. Who's the backup, and how big a deal is this?
Well, I picked LSU to go to 11-1 in media days, and I said I think Miles Brennan's going to be the starter. I think they can still do it with Max Johnson. When he came in, really, really impressive the 2 games he started, and they've got weapons all over the place. A little bit more RPO based because that's kind of his deal, but I think it's look. I described it as the healthiest quarterback competition in the SEC before Miles got hurt. And you give him Max Johnson a full month, unquestioned as the starter in fall camp. I think it could be really good. So I don't necessarily think it impacts him all that much, but it certainly minimizes or maximizes the risk. Like, you've got to keep him healthy now.
Based on what we saw early from Miles Brennan last year, he was pretty good. Do you see him in a different uniform next year?
Yeah. If Max Johnson goes out and succeeds, yeah, he'll use that one-time transfer. He's good enough to start in a lot of different places, including in the SEC. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he bails and goes somewhere and starts and becomes a star. I like the kid a lot.
Kind of nice to have all this news the week before camp actually starts, isn't it? This is fun.
Yeah. I wish the realignment stuff happened in February, though, honestly, because that'd give us a lot of stuff to talk about.
Plenty of lead time if that had been the case. All right, Barrett, thanks as always for your time. Good catching up.
Yeah, man.